Oh, weird. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Be Rude broadcast. Everything I just said is completely canceled out because I was muted. Holy shit. It's been a hectic morning, as you can clearly tell. Just a bit late, just a bit too wired. Uh, Fell asleep on the couch till like 3 in the morning, just like absolutely in shambles. But we're here. We're generally on time. How are you doing, Loud Tired Youth? Poetry was awesome. Honestly, crazy. We'll pull up some of the clips from Le Baron, who was a Quebecois poet that came through. I hosted in English and French. It was a hoot. It was a real good time. We'll check that out probably near the end of the stream. Yeah. I'm hoping to get a TV crew in there and try to like get like a professional recording. We'll see if that works out next month. I don't know if it will. Um, and today we're covering the end date, the final. It's finally over, everybody. We're covering the end of the trucker convoy. As far as I can tell, I haven't really heard much developing. Maybe a few stragglers about who think that this is still going strong. And then we're actually going to jump over to the war in Ukraine. Oh man, war in Ukraine. Yeah, it is happening. I've been trying to avoid it, mostly because I was kind of hoping I didn't have to cover it. A little worried that this would pop off, and then yeah, eventually it did, and now we got ourselves some real shit happening. World War III, everybody. It is not looking too good. Um, so we're gonna get into it. We got a couple news items lined up, and yeah, let's go. Let's go. So, 191 arrests. Freedom Convoy video vehicles are finally gone. Excuse me for the throat clearing. After more than 3 weeks of demonstrations, the only engines heard around Parliament on Sunday were those tow trucks working to remove the last remaining Freedom Convoy vehicles from downtown Ottawa. The scene marked a dramatic shift from just a day or two earlier, when police and protesters engaged in tense standoffs during Parliament Hill. We know about that. We've taken back our city. Eli L. Chantry, chair of the Ottawa Police Services Board, said in the media update. Ottawa police reported at least 191 total arrests and 76 vehicles towed. The interim police chief, Steve Bell, said that of the 191 arrests, 107 have been charged. So people were arrested but not necessarily had charges pressed against them, like more than half. A total of 389 charges have been laid so far. Holy cow. That's a lot. Ranging from mischief and obstruction to assault of a police officer. And Bell added that there will be updates. 89 released with conditions. Rest were released unconditionally. It was a relief for many residents who say it's been hell. Quote, it's been an occupation, it's been intimidating, it's been threatening, it's been frightening to walk out on the street. City is still in the process of recovering. Police have set up 100 checkpoints around the downtown core, allowing only those who live and work in the area or have a lawful reason to be there. Wow. The city is dotted with fences and barriers. We'll see if we can try to pull up some live streams that can demonstrate that on the ground. We'll see. Around the war memorial and a vast area where one of the trucker encampments once stood, there is now a police staging area closed to residents who have to walk around the zone to get to their destination. It's like we've gone from being in the midst of Duck Dynasty to being now in a police state, Mockler said. Wow, that is such a ridiculous phrase. Duck Dynasty to a police state. Ugh. I still can't say, oh, this is Bell talking, no timeline. I still can't say when we will ultimately be completed this operation. They're in a maintenance stage. Make sure that nobody returns to occupy. Yeah, just like making sure, keeping the arm outstretched. Like, no, you can't come in. Nobody's sneaking back in or anything. That's it. That's why I'm laughing, Loud Tyrant Youth. Like, it's an incredibly American show. I don't even think I've seen a single episode, much less like 5 minutes. But I've seen the characters that are like the main, I guess, talking heads in it. And they looked ridiculous. They looked absolutely ridiculous. Okay. So, as it is with any police action, there is the investigatory period. We will actively look to identify you. Ottawa Police Chief coming in hot. You've seen too much. Yeah. There's no innocence anymore. No more innocence. Metal fencing, concrete barriers, and parked police cars blocked access to a swath of blocks downtown. Seemed eerily calm. This is what we care about. Quote, if you are involved in this protest, we will actively look to identify you and follow up with financial sanctions and criminal charges. Ottawa police tweeted Sunday. A day earlier, Steve Bell was asked whether police would continue to go after those protesters who had remained in Ottawa even if they chose to go home. Quote, the simple answer is yes. You have my commitment that investigation will continue and we will hold people accountable. Of course. Trudeau says it's not over.
Merci beaucoup. Bonjour tout le monde. Hello everyone. Je suis accompagné aujourd'hui de la vice-première ministre.
I'm accompanied today by Deputy Prime Minister Freeland and Ministers Lametti, Mendicino, and Blair.
These weeks have been incredibly difficult for the people of our capital city. And they've been.
And we got some very interesting news about the Emergencies Act right after this. I'm going to try to pull it up.
Stressful and disturbing for all Canadians. The situation is not anything anyone wanted, and quite frankly, not anything we'd want to see again.
On Monday, after having consulted the provinces and territories, the federal government invoked the Emergency Measures Act. Tuesday, the Coots border crossing in Alberta was reopened, and Wednesday, the blockade in Emerson, Manitoba was removed. Today, the families and workers in Ottawa are gaining back their neighborhoods and their freedoms.
I want to take a moment to thank the law enforcement agencies from across the country who joined the operations. And I want to continue to thank them as they ensure that, among other things, Canada's border crossings remain open, including in Windsor, and that all communities are safe. We didn't want to use the Emergencies Act. It's never something to turn to without serious consideration. But after weeks of dangerous and unlawful activities, after weeks of people being harassed in their neighborhoods and small businesses forced to close, after billions of dollars were stalled in trade, putting people's jobs and livelihoods at risk, after the National War Memorial was desecrated, after evidence of increased ideologically motivated violent extremism activity across the country.
Yeah, definitely get the chills. Yeah. This is like, Canada is the most boring place politically. This is very unusual. I can't believe I've spent almost 3 weeks now just on Canadian news. It blows my fucking mind. I got so addicted to news because of America, because America was so crazy. And now, like, oh my God, the same thing's happening. The same dopamine hits, but with Canadian news.
After a flood of misinformation and disinformation washed over Canada, including from foreign sources, after these illegal blockades and occupations received disturbing amounts of foreign funding to destabilize Canada's democracy, it became clear that local and provincial authorities needed more tools to restore order and keep people safe.
For
the past few days, parliamentarians have been debating the Emergencies Act and will be voting on it tonight. I ask all members of Parliament to take action against illegal blockades and to...
Also, thanks for the follow, USA Freedom Truckers. I got a truck in the background of that GIF. Although, you know what? It's kind of small. I wonder if I would make that bigger somehow.
To stand up for public safety and for the freedom of Canadians.
Freedom!
Invoking the Emergencies Act has been necessary. Law enforcement agencies relied on it to set up secured areas in downtown Ottawa and at border crossings. It prevented foreign money from continuing to fund illegal blockades, and it's making sure our borders remain open. It has been the responsible thing to do. We now have a choice to make as a society. We can choose to keep reliving these scenes that tear at the values that bind us as Canadians, or we can choose to remember who we are and the best vision of what Canada can be. What we've seen in these past weeks is not the story of this pandemic. The story of this pandemic is one of unity, and solidarity. La pandémie, c'est l'histoire des travailleurs de la
The pandemic is a story about the workers in the health sector who come to work every day, regardless of how tired they are or the difficulties that await them. It's the story of truckers and frontline workers who keep the economy running. It's the story of children and seniors who have remained strong and resilient.
Children, seniors.
We've seen people across the country who have been working together and adapted together to save lives. We've got some of the highest vaccination rates in the world.
True.
We've all made sacrifices. And yes, it was difficult. The lives of 36,000 Canadians were taken by COVID-19. These were grandparents, parents, children, friends, and neighbors.
Oh, God.
But throughout it all, we were there for each other.
Through this pain and heartbreak, Canadians answered the call because Canadians are good people.
You hear that, everybody?
We're among the world leaders in vaccination and health outcomes, as well as in economic recovery and job creation. It took courage. It took resilience. But we did it together. And despite the many challenges that we faced, our democratic institutions remain strong. We don't always agree, and that's okay. In fact, it's not only healthy to have debates in a democracy, it's necessary. Our government will always defend freedom of expression and freedom of peaceful assembly. These values are at the core of our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Okay, this looks like is this live right now? Sorry, I'm switching really hard on you guys, but was this from yesterday? Okay, sorry, this is from yesterday. Yeah, we'll catch up on this. Sorry, I saw the live and just jumped. I thought maybe there was news on Ukraine.
They're at the core of who we are as Canadians. In a democracy, you can protest. You can share your opinion at the top of your lungs. You can disagree with elected officials. You can certainly disagree with me. But you can't harass your fellow citizens who disagree with you. You can't hold a city hostage.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that too.
You can't block a critical trade corridor and deprive people of their jobs. You can't attack journalists for reporting.
Can't do that.
Which is essential to our democracy.
Yo.
What you can do is vote. What you can do is run for office.
Yeah, he says this because he knows
how change happens in a democracy.
He's right, but damn, plays the game.
On est tous fatigués de la pandémie.
We're all tired of the pandemic, but that doesn't mean you have the right to participate in illegal blockades or occupations or to put others in danger. And it's unacceptable to attack a journalist because they're doing their work or to intimidate people and get in the way of the freedom of the press. There's no doubt that the last weeks have been trying times, that the last years have been painful, and that there are still challenges to be overcome. But we can't let anger divide us.
More than ever, now is the time to work together. It's also the time to reflect on the kind of future we want for our country. There's a lesson for all of us in what happened this month. We don't know when this pandemic is going to finally end, but that doesn't mean we can't start healing as a nation. And it starts with all of us. If you spend a lot of time online, try looking outside your social media bubble.
You know what? This is a really interesting line, but the question period afterward was also pretty clutch.
A lot of time online.
That's you.
Try looking outside your social media bubble every now and then.
Get off the social media.
If you have a cousin who you haven't seen in a while because they're unvaccinated or because they're vaccinated, give them a call.
Hear that, everybody? Daddy Trudeau wants you to call your family members that you love. Call your mom.
If a political conversation got heated, during a recent gathering and a friend or relative left early,
Like at Thanksgiving?
pick up the phone.
That's it.
Not to try to convince them, not to argue, but simply to ask how they're doing.
Oh my God. Just like, what is happening? What is happening? Have you seen? Only a Canadian liberal political leader could pull off this conversation and it actually come off as slightly sincere. It's honestly incredible. His craftsmanship, his delivery of all of these lines is fucking mastercraft. I love how conservatives just like joke about how he's like a soy boy, whatever, but they don't realize the political value of being able to deliver a speech like this convincingly. A lot of people will eat this shit up. Yeah, and because it's such a bog standard, simple, kindergarten friendly message, it carries really easily, really well. It's not like risky for him politically to do it. But the only risk really involved is whether people think you're sincere or not. And he has crafted the performance of sincerity. And so it's incredibly difficult to like cast a stone at this speech. It's like, yeah, every Canadian would agree. Unity, you know what I mean? And it's like, I think this is one of the rare times you see a politician do the whole like show, don't tell, where he's showing empathy rather than saying we need unity or don't do disunity, don't be so divisive as we see. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. I really found this section fascinating.
Look, in the heat of the moment,
Merci, Daddy Trudeau.
we can all get carried away
Papa Trudeau.
trying to win an argument. But not every single conversation has to be about winning an argument.
You hear that, chatters? You hear that? If you disagree with me, we can agree to disagree sometimes.
Sometimes it's more important to just be there for one another.
Oh.
As a country, let's aim for more decency in our public discourse, not less. Let's cherish the democracy that we have, and let's commit ourselves every day to working together to make it even better.
How do you leave that speech not feeling good about, being a Canadian? Golly gee, Trudeau government moves to make expanded surveillance powers over financial transactions permanent. From the National Review, one of our most syndicated investigative journalist outlets. Oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck, oh, fuck. As all eyes were trained on the aggressive police sweep of the Ottawa trucker convoy this week, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration was quietly moving to implement a sweeping expansion of surveillance power at the federal level. Cool. That's not being widely reported. Maybe the Vaush stands were right. The Trudeau government's financial war against the truckers has been covered at length, but one underreported aspect of this broader assault on Canadian civil liberties is the effort to bring crowdfunding and payment service providers, two of the most prominent routes for financial transactions on the internet, under the permanent control of a centralized government authority. In a February 14 news conference, Canadian finance... I've been saying this over and over and over and over again. That this has been very clear to me since the very beginning. So I'm curious if anyone else is surprised by this section right here. In a February 14 news conference, Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland said that the government was using the Emergencies Act to broaden, quote, the scope of Canada's anti-money laundering and terrorist financing rules so that they can cover crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers they use. Yes, that's exactly what I glommed onto. That broadened power requires all forms of digital transactions, including cryptocurrencies, to be reported to the Financial Transactions and Reports Analysis Centre of Canada, FINTRAC. And we can talk about FINTRAC later. Not exactly the most neutral organization, absolutely failing Canada for the real estate crisis, for instance. Quote, as of today, all crowdfunding platforms and the payment service providers that use must register with FINTRAC, yada, yada, yada. She justified the move as a way to mitigate the risk of illicit funds and increase the quality and quantity of intelligence received by FINTRAC and make more information available to support law enforcement. Trudeau nods his head. Freeland said the trucker convoy, which had assembled to protest coronavirus restrictions, had highlighted the fact that digital assets and funding... Okay, we want to know why this is bad. Wait, this is not exactly new information. Wait a minute. Wait. Maybe I'm confused here. National Review. Oh, wait, it's an American. Wait, what the fuck? Oh, I'm thinking of the National Enquirer. I'm sorry, everybody. I just read a right-wing rag. I just got almost to the end of a right-wing rag and was like, wait, but we knew all this information. Wait, what the fuck are you talking about? No, National Enquirer is something different. Fuck. Oh, God. I'm all confused now. All right. We're moving on, everybody. We have an opinion piece from the Globe and Mail. It's time for Parliament to end the state of emergency. One of the questions immediately after, like, Trudeau gave his, like, we need to have empathy speech, was like, one of the questions was, hey, the blockade's over. Like, people, you cleared everybody. Why do you still need these powers? What's going on? And Trudeau was like, every day we're asking ourselves whether we need these powers or not. Every day we're assessing. The House of Commons is scheduled to vote Monday night on the Emergencies Act. We believe that MPs should either vote no or, if they vote yes, only do so after imposing strict conditions on the exceptional legal powers the government has given itself. A week ago, when the Trudeau government activated the never-before-used law, there were compelling arguments for and against its use. Let's read this. At least 4 border crossings had suffered prolonged blockades. Streets around Parliament have been occupied. Whether that was a national emergency justifying the heaviest hammer in the federal legal arsenal is something that lawyers and historians will debate for years to come. But for MPs and senators, the question of what was justified 7 long days ago is now moot. A week is a long time in politics. By the time the government declared the emergency last Monday afternoon, the most significant of the blockades in Windsor, Ontario had been dispersed. The border blockade in Coutts had been raided, who seized weapons from a group of alleged radicals, and the other protesters announced they were going home, also before the state of emergency. A Surrey, BC border blockade was largely dispersed Monday, and the road fully opened on Tuesday. Also last Tuesday, blockaders at the Emerson-Manitoba border agreed to move out. So it looks like everything's resolving. Everyone's going home. A week ago, the only significant and continuing incident of persistent lawlessness was the park-in on Parliament Hill. It was illegal, and it had to be ended. But did it constitute a once-in-a-generation national emergency? Even that is now moot, the protesters and the trucks having been removed on the weekend. Yeah, here we're starting to get to the crux of it. As such, the question before Parliament is not, quote, was Canada facing an unprecedented national emergency a week ago? It is rather, is Canada facing an unprecedented national emergency today? Very good question. Last week, there were arguments both for and against the Emergencies Act, but changed circumstances to basic facts on the ground have greatly strengthened the arguments against to the point where they are overwhelming. A week ago, the Conservatives and the Bloc Québécois said they would vote against the state of emergency, while the New Democrats, with enough votes to give the Liberals a majority, said they would support it. But the NDP also indicated that could change as conditions evolved. MPs who are convinced there is still a national emergency should nevertheless be eager to limit the scope of the government's emergent authority. First limit, time. When it activated the legislation, the government said it was doing so for 30 days. Wow, that's actually pretty incredible. And that it hoped to end the emergency sooner if possible. It's possible. Why not cut the period in half, meaning the emergency would end a week from now? Second limit, exceptional powers. There should be a particular concern about 2 emergency powers the government has given itself. There is a ban on people going to places and bringing children to places where an illegal demonstration may occur. Not where an illegal demonstration is occurring, where one may occur. That is a sweeping proscription, like to prevent something. The government has also given itself the authority to order financial institutions to freeze bank accounts, credit cards, and investment accounts on the say-so of the Minister of Finance without so much as a court order. And this is what we heard being, the Conservatives are hand-wringing around this one. Do we need new laws with more severe punishments for anyone who in the future occupies streets, interferes with infrastructures, or blockades supporters? Probably. Yada, 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 yada. Okay. And he basically asking the question, shouldn't we just deal with this with like laws? So how did it go, everybody? How did the vote go Monday? Are we currently in a state of emergency? We sure are. On a motion for confirmation of the declaration of emergency, it was adopted. 185 for the yeas, 151 for the nays. Statutory order: consideration of a motion for confirmation of the declaration of emergency pursuant to subsection 58(5) of the Emergencies Act. That, pursuant to Section 58 of the Emergencies Act, this House confirmed the declaration of a public order emergency proclaimed on February 14th. And now vote for it. Trudeau is in the chat, or in the comments, saying, invoking the Emergencies Act has been necessary. It has helped us to take action against illegal blockades and to stand up for public safety and the freedom of Canadians. For more on that, tune into my update. And then we ended up watching that. Okay, so one of the things that's interesting about this, one is, of course, the vote count. That is Liberals and NDP in the majority, Conservatives and Bloc Québécois in the minority. This is like literally how our election turned out. It only seems like partisanship has deepened. I don't see much more here than that there is a tenuous majority. Don't forget the Bloc exists. They won't let you forget it. They did pretty good, I thought, in this election. Bloc Québécois seats. You know how jealous Alberta is of the Bloc Québécois? Like a bloody federal party that doesn't care about the nation and only cares about its own province. Like, yo, that is money. That is cash money on the table. 32 seats. Largely hanging on. And he did pretty all right in Bernier in most of the debates. In the French one, he absolutely trounced them, but that's kind of like to be expected. Taking down, making private their streams from the Freedom Convoy out of pure fear created by the Emergencies Act. Oh, that's unfortunate, JJ. I really hate to see that type of self-censorship. I think that's a serious problem. I don't really expect them to be getting into trouble because they're doing entertainment. And unless they were accepting donations, but no, even if you disagree with the Conservatives, even if you thought this whole movement was bullshit, I don't like that kind of self-censorship because it just like reduces the information pool we all get to use to like form our opinions. You just have less facts from people on the ground. So that's like usually a bad thing. And I mean specifically live streamers and like journalists and those type of folk. It's not that big a deal if it's like, like right-wing chuds spouting pure unfiltered propaganda, but we'll try not to make those sweeping judgments. Okay, RCMP coming for you.
Well, to join us now.
Oh, don't you do it. The ads. Oh, God. Hey, did you guys notice there's no ads on YouTube? Because I'm like paying for the premium, paying like almost $10 a month so that you guys get ad-free content. Golly. Tell your friends. Well, and there's no ads on this. If you notice, you haven't been served any ads. I could serve you ads, but I don't because I want you to have a good experience. As long as you're looking critically, it's not a huge issue. It's just everyone tends to not be critical these days. Yeah, that has a lot to do with these social media platforms we use. Government barely has enough legal ID information to match SIN numbers in their data. Yeah. Okay, let's see about
or look at
RCMP.
Wellington Street in front of Parliament Hill, again secured by police after yesterday's police actions. I want to bring in Michael Kempa, an associate professor of criminology at the University of Ottawa. We've had him on.
Oh, I almost spit my water. Look at that fucking guitar. Oh my God.
For these past several weekends. So, Michael, good to see you again. Listen, let's begin in the nation's capital.
Okay, this guy's intense. This is like such a good journalist. Holy shit. He was trouncing the Canadian Civil Liberties Union representative on like a segment, just like asking her hard-hitting question after hard-hitting questions. I have so much respect for this dude.
Capital. Describe for us what phase of the operation we're now in. Parliament Hill is secured. Police have set up gates as well as positions where they are not allowing people to make their way back up to the parliamentary precinct. So where are we now in terms of the operation?
So it's clear that the police have very effectively cleared most of the city, apart from a little bit of mop-up of people who remain, who are still in town. The phase we're at now is that the police are prepared for what I'd call echo protest.
Oh, fuck. Boris Johnson is giving live remarks in the House of Commons about the war in Ukraine right now.
Offer support to our Ukrainian friends. And I do think it has been right for us to be out in front in offering military assistance, defensive military assistance to the Ukrainians. I think that has been the right thing to do. I spoke last night to President Zelensky, who made further requests, and we will consider them. We're doing everything we can to offer support in the time that we have, and we will do that. But I just think it is worth, and I'm glad that the right honourable gentleman seemed to support that as well. It is absolutely vital in this critical moment that President Putin understands that what he is doing is going to be a disaster for Russia. And it is clear from the response of the world to what he has done already in Donbass that he is going to end up with a Russia that is poorer as a result of the sanctions that the world will implement. A Russia that is more isolated, a Russia that has pariah status, Mr. Speaker. No chance of holding football tournaments in a Russia that invades sovereign countries, Mr. Speaker. And a Russia that is engaged in a bloody and debilitating conflict.
What the fuck?
With a fellow Slav country. What an appalling result for President Putin, Mr. Speaker. I hope that he steps back from the brink and does not conduct a full invasion. But in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, we must implement the tough package that we put forward, and we will continue to offer the Ukrainian people all the support that we can.
Theresa May.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome my right honourable friend's statement and also welcome the UK's unwavering support for
And welcome to JJ Dino. Yo, welcome to the stream. I didn't say that before.
which shows we can never take our eyes off Russia.
Remember her?
But does my right honourable friend share my concern that while the focus today is rightly on protecting Ukrainian independence and territorial integrity, what lies behind this is a wider worldwide trend of authoritarian states trying to impose their way of thinking on others, and that the battle in which we must now engage is nothing more nor less than the defence of democracy itself.
My right honourable friend is entirely right, and that is what is at stake. And what happens in Ukraine, what is happening in Ukraine now, is being watched around the world, and the echoes will be heard in Taiwan, in East Asia, and throughout the world.
We now come to the Leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I thank the Prime Minister for advance sight of his statement, and to the National Security Advisor who has briefed opposition leaders. Mr. Speaker, this is a dark day for the people of Ukraine and for people right across our European continent. Europe stands on the brink of war.
Yikes.
As a consequence of Russian aggression.
Yikes.
It is a day that communities across Scotland, right across these islands and indeed across Europe, desperately hoped would never come to pass. But although that sense of darkness defines today, how we now collectively respond will define the days to come. This chamber, especially during recent months, has seen fierce debate and disagreements. But today, I think it's important to say, in the face of Russian aggression against Ukraine, that in this House, that we all stand together. Stand together and stand with our partners across Europe and indeed across the globe. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, we stand with the Ukrainian people who are now under assault. A European country, an ally, is under attack. We should be very clear about what is now happening. This is an illegal Russian occupation of Ukraine, just as it was in Crimea. Russia has effectively annexed another 2 Ukrainian regions in a blatant breach of international law.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin, he recognized the independence of like these regions, 2 regions, Donbass and I think Luhansk. I can't remember the exact name, but Donbass is one of them. And by recognizing the like independence, the people saying we are now independent from Ukraine, it's being read as the casus belli, the justification for war.
Can take place. Mr. Speaker, I and my party welcome the sanctions that are now being brought forward, but it's deeply regrettable that the delay has allowed many Russian individuals to shift dirty assets and money in the last number of weeks. But can I ask the Prime Minister specifically if the Russian state and individuals will immediately be suspended from the SWIFT payment system? And just as economic sanctions against Russia are welcome, Ukraine needs immediate economic and indeed humanitarian support if required.
Notice the squeeze on money. It's like the same strategy being used for the Freedom Convoy, like squeezing the supply line of financial sustenance.
Partners of UK citizens residing in the Ukraine to come to the United Kingdom. They need that certainty and they need it today and its proxies. So
I also want to point out the irony of watching this on Reply on Russia Today.
The moment to end the complacency in implementing the Security Committee's Russia report. Will the Prime Minister now commit to its full implementation and update the House accordingly? Can I also ask the Prime Minister that after the UN Security Council meeting last night, the brief meeting, when it will next meet, and what coordination is happening across all international organisations to force President Putin to step back from the brink before it is too late? Finally, let President Putin hear loudly and clearly that he must now desist from this act of war, this attack on a sovereign nation. Let us all demonstrate that we stand with the people of Ukraine.
Mr. Speaker, can I wholeheartedly thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for the terms in which he has just spoken, the unity and the resolve that he has just shown in common with the Right Honourable Gentleman, the Leader of the Opposition. I think the spirit that this House is showing today is absolutely invaluable, and he's right to raise questions about the speed in which we've been able to sanction various individuals. We did bring forward the Magnitsky sanctions, as he knows, and he was important in that.
Yeah, war's always a lose-lose game.
Beneficial ownership faster than any other country, stripping away the veil on Russian dirty money. He asked about support for Ukraine. As I mentioned to the House, we've given £100 million worth of support, particularly for Ukraine's energy crisis and also for other economic needs, plus the further $500 million that I announced just now. And Mr. Speaker, the diplomatic effort.
I don't think a lot of people realize that part of the reason Russia's been able to do what it's been able to do is because Europe relies on it for gas. It's like 30% of like Europe's gas comes from like Russia. So yeah, gas is gonna fucking spike.
Whether or not to halt what seems to be an absolutely irresistible march towards tragedy. It's down to him.
Oh, it's Germany.
It's in his head.
It's just Germany? I thought it was all of Europe. I was gonna pull up. I had like a source that was gonna clarify that for me later. But yeah, I might just be... I'm not from Europe, so I could easily be getting this wrong.
Mr. Speaker, may I welcome my right honourable friend's statement today and indeed the actions of he and his government over these recent weeks. May I pay particular tribute to the Defence Secretary, whose unfailing efforts in preparing not just the people of Ukraine but our allies in NATO for this aggression has been exemplary. May I ask, as we are talking about sanctions today, and rightly so, whether my right honourable friend will also commit to a Foreign Agents Registration Act. We have seen the action of the insidious work of the United Front for China and indeed of different outfits for Russia.
Yeah, a lot of the inflation though is being driven by corporate greed. If you start digging into like what's going on with inflation, a lot of like corporations are recording record profits, gloating to their investors about how they've been able to sort of like capitalize on concerns about inflation and just to boost prices, you know, like to use inflation as their cover. It's like become this really dangerous feedback loop. Yeah, corporations are driving a lot of the inflation last I checked, plus the supply chain issues, of course.
Law, we are indeed considering what more we can do to counter threats to this country from within.
Dame Margaret Hodge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. According to expert legal advice I've seen, there are serious flaws in the new sanctions regime. Yeah. It may not affect oligarchs close to Putin who do not hold an official position in a company or own less than 50% of shares. It's too narrow in defining the individuals it covers. Unlike US legislation, it's limited in how we can sanction Russian government officials.
Interesting.
And the definition of government of Russia excludes the legislative branch like the Duma.
What the fuck?
That means that kleptocrats who have stolen from the Russian people and support Putin would not be caught. Of Navalny's list of 35, only 13 would be caught. Abramovich, Usmanov, Timchenko.
There's a lot of talk about how this city of London is like a massive gateway for Russian dark money.
So that in the words of the Foreign Secretary, nothing is off the table.
Wow, that was a good
I thank her very much, and I think that I understand her concern, but I believe that she's in error in what she says, because we can certainly target members of the Duma. Abramovich has already facing sanctions, and in the announcements that I've made today, Gennady Timchenko, to whom she just referred, is specifically targeted. He's on the list. She's just mentioned him. He's on the list, as is Boris Rottenberg and Igor Rottenberg. These are people who are very close to the Putin regime. But as I said to the House, they are just part of the first barrage.
Speaker, could I welcome the government's efforts to date, but Russia's actions move us into a new and more dangerous phase of this crisis and requires us to adapt a more robust long-term approach to defending European security outside of NATO's borders. Sanctions alone will not be enough. Indeed, untargeted sanctions may play into Putin's plan to pivot Russia ever closer to China. So would the Prime Minister agree NATO must not be benched? It was created to uphold European security, and we must now consider how we utilise our formidable hard power deterrence in responding to Ukraine's calls for further help, not excluding the formation of a potential no-fly zone.
I thank the right honourable gentleman very much, and he's absolutely right to place the emphasis that he does on NATO. And NATO has proved its value over the last 70 years. It is the preeminent, most successful alliance in history. It is a defensive alliance, and we are reinforcing it now on the eastern, all across the eastern perimeter. What NATO is not doing, and no NATO country is currently considering sending combat troops to Ukraine, and he will understand the reasons for that. But that does not preclude support by NATO countries for Ukraine, and including military support, Mr. Speaker.
David.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's time to start treating Russia like the rogue state it is, and I strongly welcome the Prime Minister's statement on this darkest of moments, and I recognise the Leader of the Opposition for his strong cross-party support. And in that cross-party spirit, can I urge the Prime Minister to go further today and commit to the following? First, freeze and begin seizing the assets of every single one of Putin's cronies in the UK, and then expel these oligarchs from our country as part of a much stronger sanctions regime. Second, Mr. Speaker, recognise the existential threat posed by Putin to our NATO allies by immediately cancelling his own decision, his misguided decision, to cut our armed forces by 10,000 troops. And third, no longer tolerate international sporting or cultural events hosted in Russia. So can I confirm what I think he implied in an answer to a previous question, that he will push for this year's Champions League final to be moved from St. Petersburg? Mr. Speaker, President Putin has made a terrible decision. Will the Prime Minister make sure he pays a terrible price?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to him and his party for their support and for the position that we're taking. We are indeed cracking down on ill-gotten gains in London and on the cronies of Vladimir Putin, as I've just detailed, and there is more to come on his point about defence spending. I think he should acknowledge that the recent increase was the biggest since the end of the Cold War. And, Mr. Speaker, on his point about sporting events, as I said earlier on, I think it is inconceivable that major international football tournaments can take place in Russia after, as I say, the invasion of a sovereign country.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does my right honourable friend accept that too many NATO governments and political parties have accepted energy dependence on Putin and financial dependence on dodgy donations from Russian oligarchs? Given that we spent between 4.5% and 5% of GDP on defence throughout the 1980s until the end of the Cold War, will he now accept 3% of GDP on defence as a suitable future benchmark?
Biggest capitalist scum? Biggest seller?
No,
that's
completely right.
As if it's America that sells all the guns. Come on, Lothra. Come on. Britain is maybe at best a distant second, if not third or fourth.
In countries, in the UK, we're in the fortunate position of only having 3% of our gas coming from Russia, but other European countries have learned that they have much more to do. And by the way, I salute the decision of the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz to cancel Nord Stream 2. I think it's a brave step by Olaf and the right thing to do. On
America,
on his point about defence spending, actually we're up at 2.4%.
France, Germany, China, then UK. UK 3.3%, half of China, which is half of Germany and China at 5%, UK at 3%. France at 8%. That's like all the arms they sell in Africa, I'm sure. And Russia, I don't know what the fuck is going on with that. 20%. I don't know what. I didn't know that. That's a big surprise to me. And of course, America dominates.
By having Nancy Pelosi in this chamber yesterday, she's very close to President
Apparently not.
Of the United
Apparently
States.
It's Germany.
Did he have a chance to talk to her? Because it isn't good enough for us, cross-party, wonderful unity in this House, but we need the United States to be firm in leadership with us.
Which surprised me.
I thank him very much, and I did have a chance to talk to Nancy and Pelosi and her bipartisan delegation, and I must say, Mr. Speaker, that the sentiments that have been expressed by members of this House already today were very much shared by that delegation of congressmen and women.
Dr. Liam Fox.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome my right honourable friend's statements and say that I think the UK government has behaved with integrity and honour throughout this crisis, and I echo his welcoming of Chancellor Scholz's brave decision today to freeze Nord Stream 2. But can I say to my right honourable friend, sanctions can only achieve so much when dealing with an undemocratic state and someone like Putin. What we're witnessing is the real-time cannibalisation of a European democratic state, bite by bite. Whoa. And ultimately, we will have to ensure that either Ukraine...
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Lothra.
Ukraine is given the means to defend itself from future aggression or give some sort of security guarantee, or we will find Russian troops on the borders of Poland, Slovakia, Romania and Hungary, which would be an absolute failure of Western policy.
One of the lesser known things, or some of the things that disappeared into the memory hole, is that the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump was about Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, begging Trump and essentially, being compromised because he desperately needed anti-tank weapons to sort of fend off any Russian aggression, which overly relies on tanks.
My right honourable
starting to talk about stopping NATO. Are you talking about Eastern expansionism from NATO?
He's completely right in the sense that we will have to bed in, we will have to dig in for the long term to support Ukraine in every way that we can, economically, diplomatically, by the provision of military support in the way that we are already, Mr. Speaker. But it will take time. But
I understand that pretty well. But like sanctions are like, you're going to ramp up all the sanctions you have before you start putting troops on the ground. Well, the reason people don't talk about it is because we live in different media spheres and there's no love lost for Russia. Like, as you can hear in this House of Commons, it's the same opinion out in Canada. Like, we see it as a kleptocratic state where there isn't much representation from the people by the government. You're increasingly seeing this authoritarian regime. So yeah, there's like no real reason for NATO to be like sympathetic. So because they're aggressive, yeah, they're going to do the aggressive things of start like tightening the noose. What do you expect?
Because we've got to be there until this is brought to a problem.
I just want to bring it make it really clear that Russia like is in favor of climate change because it will give them access to Arctic oil reserves that Canada is currently in competition for. And I don't think either of these countries should have these fucking Arctic reserves. So like from a climate change perspective, Russia is like a piece of shit. But yeah, I really don't want war to happen. War is fucking awful. War.
Stake here today.
Ian Duncan Smith.
Speaker, can I commend my right honourable friend and his colleagues
more
for
war,
their
less
very
war.
stalwart actions so far. The fact is that Mr. Lavrov today said, and I quote, "Ukraine does not have a right to sovereignty."
Oh.
So the ambition and the scale of that ambition is surely completely clear to anybody that doubts it.
Yikes.
So I ask my right honourable friend, should it not be now, and I commend what he's done so far, but should it not be that we need to hit them, if we're going to hit them with sanctions, hard and hit them now? They need to feel the pain of the first part of this decision. The second thing is, what is the ultimatum to them now? If they move further, are we going to take further action? And I simply say right now, we are facing the growth of the axis of totalitarian states. China will watch this and look at Taiwan. How we behave now and what we do as an alliance will dictate what happens
Oh my God,
in the
it's
Far
happening.
East.
The world splitting into 3 global regions, like described in George Orwell's 1984, is happening. Oh my God.
Which they violate the sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine, we will continue to punish Russia. And in the
East
end,
Asia,
I don't believe that President Putin has thought
Eurasia.
this through, and I do think that he will fail.
Chris Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Putin, as I've been saying for many years, is a bloodthirsty liar. When his ambassador came to the House a couple of weeks ago to talk to the all-party group on Russia, he said it was absolutely preposterous that anybody could possibly suggest that any Russian troops would be going into Ukraine.
There is a policeman in my head, and I need him to get out.
Lie. But my anxiety is that we're not going anywhere near far enough today. In 2014, we were spineless in the end. We didn't show enough resolve across the West or in the UK.
Sorry, I fucked it up. There is a policeman inside all our heads. He must be destroyed.
I don't think Abramovich has been sanctioned, incidentally, just to correct the Prime Minister. I don't think he's been sanctioned yet at all. So I think it's really important, precisely what the former leader of the Conservative Party just said. Everybody in this House will work.
Why don't you think it's a real democracy? I'm curious about that. Like, I know it's like pretty fucked up over there, especially like with the Lukashenko regime. But if we let Russia take Ukraine, then essentially NATO is conceding, right? Like they don't. I know it's really tricky, because I don't think like Ukraine has been trying to join NATO, but their political will has been neutered by like corrupt government officials that are in Russia's bag. Last I checked, like that's where Paul Manafort comes from. Like the campaign manager for Trump was Paul Manafort, who helped Lukashenko sort of like maintain a Russian regime until there was the Maidan Revolution, right? When people revolted and overthrew their corrupt leaders, and then we had a comedian rise, and now we are where we are today. If Russians pull their investments from UK, I'm sure the economy will be hit. And with all the economic issues they had by leaving EU, ain't going to be pretty. Yeah, I heard like the Russian stock market tanked or something like that. I don't really know what that means though. Why is Ukraine so far up Russia's ass? Because Russia, its historic city, is one of its major cultural capitals, Kyiv. I think it was, oh fuck, what city is it? There's like a major, like important city in Ukraine. It used to be Russia, and then it like broke off after the collapse of the Soviet Union, I think. Fuck, testing me on my history. Jesus.
Night and those lives already lost. I urge my right honourable friend to blacklist all Russian banks, but to ban the city and law and accountancy firms from servicing all Russian state firms.
It is Kiev.
And to work with
It's
Turkey
Kiev.
to deny the Russian Navy access to the Bosphorus and ensure we have an atrocity prevention strategy in place for when the paramilitary...
Oh my God, yeah. In Kiev, there is a historic Orthodox Christian monastery from 1051, and St. Sophia's Cathedral is in there.
...go in alongside the peacekeepers.
Oh my God.
I thank her very much, and that is exactly why the UK has been out in front of our European friends in dealing with Russian dirty money. And
I think like a third of Ukraine like speaks Russian as well, like in the eastern provinces.
We will go further.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. These are perilous times for our friends in Ukraine, a democracy within our continent. And short of sending British troops there, we must provide them with every possible support. I'm glad that the Prime Minister is talking tough and taking a strong stand against continued Russian aggression and imperialism. But when will he himself stop playing tennis with Russian oligarchs in exchange for money for the Conservative Party? And instead of talking about sanctions abroad, when will he finally help to clean up things closer to home, including fully implementing the recommendations of the Russia report?
Oh, wow. Good point.
So, Mr. Speaker, the government, as I said, is way out in front of our other European friends and partners in what we're doing to implement sanctions on Russian entities, and that's the right thing. I think that's where the House is today, and we will continue to do that. And yes, Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely vital that nobody should contribute to a political party in this country unless they're a UK national, and that is what that is something that this government.
Dark foreign money again. Really quickly, here is the Ukrainian President Zelensky's full address to the nation. Holy cow words. Quote, "Dear people, we and our state do not have time for long lectures on history. I will not talk about the past. I will talk about current realities and our future. Ukraine is within its internationally recognized borders and will remain so. Despite any statements and actions of the Russian Federation, we will remain calm and confident. I want to thank all our citizens for this. You are proving once again that Ukrainians are a smart and wise nation, and in spite of everything, we keep a cool head, react calmly, carefully, like an adult. We are ready for anything, but there's no reason for you to have a sleepless night. Tonight, we held a meeting of the National Security and Defense Council. Ukraine qualifies the latest actions of the Russian Federation as a violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our state." Oh, fuck, it's happening. "All responsibility for these decisions are made by Russia's political leadership. Recognition of the independence of the occupied areas of Donetsk and Luhansk regions mean Russia's unilateral withdrawal from the Minsk agreements and them ignoring decisions within Normandy format. The Minsk agreements were like some sort of like peace agreement, I think. I still not totally clear on what the Minsk agreements were. It undermines peaceful efforts and destroys existing negotiation formats." This is Zelensky talking. "With today's and possibly tomorrow's decisions, Russia is legalizing its troops, which have actually been in the occupied territories of Donbas since 2014, the little green men, as they've been widely reported. A country that has been supporting the war for 8 years cannot maintain peace as it claims. I discussed the situation with French President Macron, German Chancellor Scholz, US President Biden, British Prime Minister Johnson, and European Council President Michel. I also plan to talk with Turkish President Erdogan. What will happen next? We want peace, and we are consistent in our actions. Today, the MFA Ukraine sent a request to the UN Security Council member states to hold immediate consultations on the basis of the Budapest Memorandum. The irony, of course, being that the UN Security Council is currently being chaired by Russia. Yeah, the world's absolutely popping off. It's happening. I initiated the convening of the UN Security Council in a special meeting of the OSCE. We insist on the OSCE to prevent provocations and further escalation. An emergency convocation of the Normandy Summit was also initiated. We expect clear and effective support steps from our partners. It is very important to see now who is our true friend and partner and who will continue to frighten the Russian Federation with words. We are committed to political and diplomatic regulation and do not succumb to any provocations. Our borders are securely protected. A system of territorial defense was created. Our partners support us. In accordance with Article 51 of the UN Charter, Ukraine reserves the right for individual and collective self-defense. We can distinguish between the provocations and the offensive of the aggressor's troops. Truth is on our side. We will never hide the truth from you. As soon as we see a change in the situation, as soon as we see an increase in risk, you will know all about it. There's currently no reason for chaotic actions. We will do everything to make it so in the future. We are committed to a peaceful and diplomatic path, and we will follow it. We are on our land. We are not afraid of anything or anyone. We owe nothing to anyone, and we will not give anything to anyone. We are sure of this because now it is not February 2014, but February 2022. Our country is different. Our army is different. The only goal is peace in Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine. Woo, sheesh.
Massive increases in our defence spending, but we want to make sure that it is targeted on things like tackling cyber, disinformation, all the modern forms of warfare in which Putin...
Yeah, Cluxy. Yeah, always has been, man, always has been.
Announced today on the 5 banks and the 3 named individuals. However, the Prime Minister will be well aware there are many, many oligarchs who would, at face value, have...
Now, the reason Canadians may care is because, like, the second largest population of Ukrainians lives in Canada. We have a massive population here, like out in the western provinces. So, like, I have a bit of a sympathetic edge, sympathetic bias on this issue.
The sanctions we will be discussing and agreeing later today do intend to make sure those trusted custodians of Russian state money are able to be sanctioned in the way the 3 individuals.
Canada stopped being like a major peacekeeping nation in like the 90s.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, we will be able to sanction oligarchs, associates of President Putin, and companies of strategic importance to the Kremlin.
Good lads.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really welcome the Prime Minister's statement today, and in particular the level of cross-house agreement that there is, that we must stand up to Russian aggression.
Bipartisanship
I also welcome
war.
Chancellor Scholz deciding to suspend Nord Stream 2. It always was an incredibly risky project, allowing great exposure to Russian gas. So can my right honourable friend assure the House that he is already considering what more can be done to protect our allies and friends in Eastern Europe from the inevitable consequences of the risky position we find ourselves in the dead of winter, with so much dependence on Russian gas?
Oh my God. Bringing it home.
I thank her very much, and I think the answer is that we need to work together to wean ourselves off, to end the dependency on Russian gas. The House knows that all the things we're doing to support our Eastern European allies militarily, but we also need to share technology, particularly in renewables, to allow them to find a different future.
Ben.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, whether the sanctions that the Prime Minister has just announced will hit Russia hard, as he said this morning, only time will tell. But the Prime Minister also said something else. He said there is a lot more that we're going to do in the event of an invasion. Now, the Prime Minister has just told the House that he regards what happened overnight as a renewed invasion of Ukraine. And if that is the government's view, then why is he waiting before imposing full sanctions on Russia now?
Full sanctions.
A couple of points, Mr. Speaker. The House will have heard me on this several times, and I've been very clear that what we wanted to do was to have the biggest possible package of sanctions ready to go in the event of a Russian towcat crossing into more sovereign Ukrainian territory. But what we will also do is make...
also known as incrementalism.
The waves of sanctions that we implement are done in concert with our allies, and that's what we're doing.
Mr. Global sanctions.
Can I
oh my God.
ask my right honourable friend to reflect, while thanking him for his statement, that President Putin has already achieved so much of what he set out to achieve.
Wow.
And that he may have no intention of launching a full-scale invasion of the Ukraine, but he has already committed the crimes that deserve the most severest punishment from the free world. And what are we going to do to continue to strengthen NATO, to unify NATO, which is exactly, of course, what he didn't want his policy to achieve?
My honourable friend is completely right. What he's succeeded in doing is greatly to unify NATO and to produce a much bigger commitment, not just by the UK, but by other major European powers to the reinforcement of NATO's eastern frontier. The French are doubling down in Romania, we're doubling down in Estonia. He's going to get much more NATO, not less.
Whoa. How do we avoid war?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
NATO be beefing up.
For over a decade, Russia have been mounting cyber attacks on our critical national infrastructure and commercial interests.
True.
For over a decade, and there were no consequences. For over a decade, Russia has been swirling dirty money around the City of London, and there were no consequences.
True. Yeah.
In order for Vladimir Putin to understand that he has now gone too far, he needs to be certain that if sanctions and diplomatic means don't succeed, then there will be consequences. Can the Right Honourable Gentleman agree with me that those consequences need to be still on the table, and Vladimir Putin needs to understand that they will be used?
If you steal more cookies from the cookie jar, you will be grounded.
The Right Honourable Gentleman is completely right that we need to make it absolutely clear to Russia that as a result of this venture, this ill-conceived and disastrous venture in Ukraine, his country will end up, as I said, poorer, more encircled by NATO, and engaged in a disastrous conflict with fellow Slavs, and a pariah state. A pariah. That is what President Putin is willing on his people. A pariah state. That's what they'll become.
David Boris.
Mr. Speaker, there's more at stake here than just sanctions. We have various international protocols that have been drafted over literally decades, going back to the last war. Where does this incursion into the Ukraine actually leave us with these protocols, and how can we enforce any further measures against any breaches of these protocols?
I thank him. He's completely right, because this tears up the 1994 Budapest memorandum. It makes an absolute nonsense.
Just to kind of switch things up a bit, just to keep us from falling asleep. Oil prices surge as Russia-Ukraine crisis escalates. I think someone called that in the chat not too long ago. At 7-year high. UN Security Council meets on Ukraine crisis as Biden readies new Russia sanctions. So all the West is pulling together. Sanctions except for Erdogan, who is probably trying to maintain friendly relations with Russia. Reuters finds its inner peace. Correction, Putin orders troops to Ukraine after recognizing breakaway regions. We are deleting previous tweets that used Putin's description of peacekeepers in referring to the troops. Reuters, you fucking idiots. This is Potemkin politics. President Putin is accelerating the very conflict he's created. That's CNN. Germany has suspended the certification process for the Nord Stream 2 pipeline following Russia's move Monday into Ukrainian territories, the Germany chancellor announced. Did you see how many barrels of oil was sold to USA by Russia for 2021? No, I didn't. I'll see if I can pull that up in a sec. As tensions deepen between... from last I heard about this, America was switching over to the Saudis to avoid that problem. They're like, okay, I guess we're getting our dirty oil from this other imperial nation. The war of language, or the language of war, ZZZ? The war of language, maybe about the Reuters piece? Or are you talking about the language of war? All this divisive rhetoric. Vladimir Putin sent troops into 2 regions, and we actually have footage of that. You know, it's crazy. We can watch World War III pop off in real time. It's fucking wild. Footage of Russia's peacekeepers, allegedly. I think there was another one that I came across. It was a lot clearer because it had this building that we just saw over there, like in clear view. This building right there. I think another reporter got it. Look how they're like up in the trees and everything. Like they're hidden. That is a scary operation for the camera controller. Holy shit. What a boss. Looks like big buses. And this is the decree instructing deployment of troops. One of the things that was mentioned, I came across the image earlier, but in the conversation between, there's like a cabinet meeting between Putin and all his lower associates that represent different regions in Russia. And the journalist's take on it that really stuck with me was that like this was no longer sort of a give and take between like people vying for power. It was very much like school children going to see the principal, with like Putin sitting literally away from the cabinet. It was a very interesting picture. Let's go back to live comments.
And I wish I could be confident that that will happen. Well, I'm afraid all the omens are pointing in the opposite direction, and I think that the House will need to consider a much bigger package of sanctions and further measures of all kinds.
I'll deal with it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Polish government has said that it must be prepared to accept up to 1 million refugees displaced by conflict or fleeing for fear of persecution. Yet last week, when asked about accepting Ukrainian refugees, our Foreign Secretary said, and I quote, "We can't make any commitments about any refugees at this stage." Amid conflict, we must always put direct support for people first. So will the government today commit to accepting all Ukrainian refugees who wish to come to the UK, and also those persecuted in Russia for their resistance to war and Putin's regime?
I thank her very much. What we're doing is helping the countries that are directly vulnerable to an exodus of refugees from Ukraine.
It's not the best of mornings because we're currently considering the outbreak of World War III, but howdy doody.
That's what we will do.
Very bad.
I strongly support the robust approach taken by my right honourable friend, which indeed he took as Foreign Secretary. But Putin will have predicted and discounted Western sanctions long ago. So does he agree that if we are not to be behind in the diplomatic chess game, we need to do some things that he is not expecting? Firstly, a sustained increase in Western defence capability and spend. And secondly, a sustained reduction in the ability of the Russian state to finance its own armed forces, with economic and financial sanctions that don't last just until the next government decides to have a reset, but if necessary, for as long as this dangerous man remains president of Russia.
We've seen a 10% increase in defence spending in this country, and we will sustain that increase in defence spending. And he's absolutely right about the financing of Putin's armed forces. And the tragedy is that they've been financed from the proceeds of the sale of Russian oil and gas to Western European nations. And that is what has got to end.
So let's look in. I don't know if this is the best source. If you have a better source, please enlighten me. I don't know much about this stuff, but this is Russia exports by country. Just let me make sure this is oil, crude oil production. Is it oil exports or all exports? Okay, maybe I pulled up the wrong source. Sorry.
Politics. So will the Prime Minister stop studiously ignoring the Russia report from the Intelligence and Security Committee, which found credible evidence of attempts to interfere with the UK's election processes? Will he...
Okay, so United States, apparently 3,175 barrels a day. That's the last exports on 39 economies. Looks like Russia dropped exports pretty... Okay, it's like, yeah, okay, there we go. 5,000 barrels. Does this seem right? And the highest right now, Canada, 3,000. Wait, what? This is just exports in total. This is just exports in total. I'm an idiot. Russia is exporting in total like 4,600. Right. That makes more sense. And yeah, the Emiratis, 2,400, 3,000 from, yeah, okay, this is starting to make sense. That's why Canada's so high. Yeah, I can't find a source for like Russian exports per country. Sorry.
Mr. Speaker, those who abet sanctioned people, help them to evade money laundering, anti-money laundering provisions, help them to conceal
that's a good point,
beneficial interests, will of course be breaking the law themselves.
Yeah, the UAE now has leverage over America, which they had already been trying to flex before.
By the United States for 4 years. We need to do better than that, Prime Minister. So will he...
Across 2021, the U.S. imported between 12 million as 26 million barrels of crude oil and petroleum from Russia every month. Anywhere between 12 and 26 million barrels every month. In November 2021, the most recent figures, Energy Information Agency reports that the U.S. took 17 million. This is November.
Many investigations against people for unexplained wealth orders, but on his point about visas, we're stopping Tier 1 visas from Russia.
Mr. Speaker. Can I just press the Prime Minister a little on the answer he gave to the Right Honourable Member for Leeds Central? I welcome his statement and its robust approach, and the fact that he's confirmed that what President Putin has done does amount to an invasion of Ukraine with the necessary measures that follow. But in answer to the Right Honourable Gentleman, the Prime Minister seemed to suggest that if what Vladimir Putin's done was limited to these alleged breakaway republics, that was a line and he had to do something else to trigger further sanctions. Can I just ask the Prime Minister to confirm that what he's already done means that we will be following up with further and stronger measures, even if President Putin does no more?
Sorry, the most important line is the most recent month from the Energy Information Agency's figures is November 2021 at 17.8 million barrels, which was cited. But here, last spring, imports of Russian oil hit the highest level in a decade. In August, Russia became the second highest exporter of oil to the United States. Interesting.
The Prime Minister's focus rightly will be on the here and now, but when he finds a moment to reflect both on the recent failures in Afghanistan, but also it being overwhelmingly clear that Russia was, is and will continue to be the greatest threat to peace and security in Europe, I wonder whether he might conclude that the Indo-Pacific
Good question, Lothra.
as outlined in the integrated review, will need to be reassessed.
Yeah, I found another source saying the same thing.
I'm glad that he's brought up the integrated review, because you will see that very early on in the integrated review, we say clearly that the Euro-Atlantic theatre is our number one issue of concern.
John Barron.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the statement and commend the Prime Minister and his government on its robust approach. But I hope he takes away from this exchange today the strong cross-party support for tougher sanctions now, because that is what is needed. I suggest to the Prime Minister that the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the fact that we've now entered a new era when it comes to the battle for democracy globally, will he now consider a substantial and sustained increase in defence spending, well above the 2.4% that is required to ensure stability and peace in our time? Because Georgia, if indeed there is room for Georgia in the future, will be more effective with stronger armed forces.
Yeah, the oil and gas companies are like
I'm grateful to him, and
major influence.
my old friend, I'm also proud of the very substantial uplift in our defence spending that we've been able to provide, and with the strongest the fastest growing economy in Europe as a result of the measures that this, in the G7 I should say, as a result of the measures this government has taken. I'm confident that we're going to be able to continue to give our armed forces the investment they need.
Champion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ukraine has been experiencing conflict since 2014, creating a crisis of 2.9 million people in need. Can the Prime Minister please confirm that the UK stands ready to work with the government of the Ukraine and international partners in providing humanitarian assistance should the conflict exacerbate?
Still better to have Biden in than Trump right now because of all the weird pro-Russian sentiment that Trump had, plus the whole Paul Manafort thing.
Welcome, my right honourable.
And pumping insider electoral information to the top spy in Russia, Konstantin Kilimnik.
It cannot be right. It cannot be right for a country to have violated the human rights of another member of the Council of Europe so profoundly? Will he support my actions?
Can I thank my honourable friend for everything he does in the Council of Europe, for the robust positions that he takes in that body, and I wholeheartedly support what he just said.
Malcolm McDonald.
I'm grateful, Mr. Speaker. The Russian disinformation networks, including RT, the Leader of the Opposition, is right in his call on that licence, Mr. Speaker. But those disinformation networks are critical to not just trying to justify Russia's aggression internationally, but maintaining that aggression as well. For how much longer will we continue in this country to pretend that outfits like RT are some kind of benign equivalent to the World Service or France 20?
I love that we're watching this on RT. So now being dependent on Russian oil is better. I don't know if that would be different if Trump was president. I don't think that would change very much. I think America would try to jump onto Saudi oil with Biden and would stick on Russian oil with Trump, I think.
And media outlets, it is up to Ofcom to rule.
In Little Granger.
Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister is well aware, and I'm following on my honourable friend just now, that I'm the group leader in the Council of Europe. We have Ukrainians in our group, Prime Minister, who are now under threat. Their families are under threat. They are going to be on the list that the US has now given.
No, but they had a major problem with the pandemic.
Intelligence on what's going to happen to them. Prime Minister, we must stand by these Democrats. They are good people. I've worked with them for now 10 years. I would have nothing but praise for them. Prime Minister, would you not agree that the Council of Europe and other organisations like this need to stand up for democracy and stand up for Democrats?
Yes, I thank him for everything he's doing in the Council of Europe, and we should stand by democratic Ukrainian politicians. We all know them. We've all met them. All they want to do is live in peace and freedom.
Yeah, and we're definitely relying quite a bit on Saudi oil. It's kind of why, like, Canada was trying to. Like, that's the argument I hear from Canadian conservatives. Like, don't you want clean Canadian oil rather than Saudi oil? And I'm like, no, I don't want any oil. Let's just get rid of all of it. We don't need it. Let's just let our societies crash, and then it'll probably be worth it in the end. Not to mention that Biden has done nothing. I mean, he's doing sanctions right now. Trump lifted sanctions. Trump lifted the sanctions that were on the Russian oligarchy that Hillary Clinton put into place when she was Secretary of State under the Obama administration. So the idea that, like, Biden's not hard enough on Russia, it's just like, well, consider the alternative, my guy, the one who was, like, quite literally compromised. Like, whoa, boy. Ever since the prince had a journalist chopped up in the embassy, yeah, MBS, Mr. Bonesaw.
Better.
Mark Pritchard.
Oh, done nothing on COVID?
Ukraine is not NATO's border yet.
Nothing is literally better than suggesting citizens go and check bleach into their whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
today. And this House, as you all know, Mr. Speaker, having met the President some months ago here, stands in full solidarity with our counterparts in the Rada and the people of Ukraine, including the people of Donetsk and Luhansk. The Prime Minister mentioned NATO members.
What's
Can I ask him what?
What's dishonest? Trump literally stood. Do you want me to pull that clip? I will do it. It is fucking hilarious. It is amazing. I will always rewatch that clip, and I love watching people try to make it make sense. You know it doesn't make sense. You know it doesn't make sense for a president to be giving medical advice and just kind of like, you know, guessing around. Just brushed it off as it's nothing. What are you talking about? Like, politicians generally should be standing out of the way of their medical professionals. And, well, the reason I'm bringing up Trump is because he is the alternative. So if you say you don't like Biden, then that means, do you prefer the alternative? If you don't prefer the alternative, then, like, yeah, let's criticize Biden, but let's not pretend about, like, yeah, of course. But, I mean, the political situation in America is deeply fucked up. Remember, there was a coup d'etat? A failed coup d'etat by the opposition party. I don't really know what you expect the Democrats to accomplish when they're compromised, first off, just by, like, corporate money. You can see that with Joe Manchin and especially Kyrsten Sinema. It has to be Biden because the left has been thoroughly crushed in America. Just to really drive this point home, Bernie Sanders is not even a left-wing politician in Canada. Like, as a Canadian looking at Bernie, I don't see him as lefty. I see him as like a centrist. Like his policies would be almost right wing for Canada. So yeah, no, there are no normal Democrats. The system's poisoned. The DNC's fucked up.
Orchestrating in concert with our friends and partners, keeping something in reserve. Because there must still be the possibility that we can avert a hideous outbreak of bloodshed in Ukraine.
Isabel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister is right to
yes,
say
sure.
that Ukraine has been invaded by Russia. I think both sides of the House were expecting stronger sanctions to be announced today, and I think maybe that's what the government wanted to do. But the Prime Minister said he had to move in lockstep with our other allies. Was there resistance from other allies to bring in full sanctions today?
That's a good question.
Different countries have different priorities and considerations. It's considerably easier for us to impose economic sanctions. It's difficult for other countries to impose sanctions on to block hydrocarbons.
Syria supports Putin's recognition of Ukraine breakaway regions. Reuters just reported.
But I'm very pleased by the progress that the German government has made.
No surprise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a day of infamy in Russian history, but the truth is that we're here today because our strategy of deterrence has failed. President Putin has built an arsenal of kleptocracy. He perverts history for his pretexts and he perverts science for his weapons. But the risk is that today's slap on the wrist will not deter anything further. It's been 2014 since we proposed sanctions for economic crimes, apart from the Magnitsky sanctions. The sanctions against the oligarchs have been on the American list since 2018. Missing from the list was VTB, VEB, Alpha, Spearbank. The Prime Minister's got to recognise that pulling our punches does not work with President Putin. We need to punch harder, and if we're not prepared to send bombers, we should at least take on the bankers.
Mr. Speaker, we certainly are taking on the bankers. We're hitting Russia's.
Bernie is technically an independent party senator. Yeah, there's no disagreement there. He's been, was independent in for his entire career until he switched to Democrat to try to win the presidency.
Talked about a quarrel in a faraway country between people of whom we know nothing. Doesn't the concordance between both sides of the House today demonstrate that this is not the case when it comes to Ukraine?
My honourable friend is so right, and I think everybody who knows people in the Ukrainian community in Britain, which is so large, so active, makes such a fantastic contribution to our life, feels a huge amount of sympathy for the people of Ukraine today. This is a country that we have familiarity with, that we understand. It's a country that is a democracy and that shares our values, and that's what's at stake today.
Jim Shannon.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for his statement and what he has said today? As we've woken up to disturbing news of Russian aggression, does the Prime Minister not agree that economic sanctions, whilst welcome, will not be enough?
So many old
and as
white
such,
dudes.
is the Prime Minister prepared to underline the steps that have been taken with NATO allies to assess the situation and stress that membership in NATO is not a prerequisite for us in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland for supporting democracy in whatever way is deemed necessary?
But we don't body shame on this stream there, Lacey. No body shaming.
That it is up to the people of Ukraine to decide what.
Except Bojo. You can make fun of his hairstyle because he wants you to make fun of it. It's the only exception.
NATO's open door policy should remain absolutely inviolate.
Robert Halfon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I strongly support the approach of the government, and like my right honourable friend for Lichfield said, it is not a faraway country of which we know nothing. Could I just ask my right honourable friend, what assessment have the government made of the impact from the war on energy prices, of oil prices, and the subsequent impact on people at home, and what measures can the government mitigate those factors which are, as we know, the war is likely to increase the cost of living for ordinary folk across the country?
Oh yeah, get ready everybody. Tighten those belts.
He's quite right that one of the risks of Putin's venture is that there could be a spike in gas prices and oil prices, Mr. Speaker, and the government will do everything we can to mitigate and to help the people of this country. But it's one of the reasons why the whole of Western Europe has got to end their dependence on Russian oil and gas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I ask the Prime Minister to place on his record his respect and admiration for the brave men and women, the OSC monitors, who for 8 years have been on the border with Ukraine, that now face an impossible position, a democratic member state under attack from a fellow member state? And does he know where we'll be? Can he predict by July, when I speak as a member of...
I mean, seriously, Lacey, we're on the precipice of war and you're worried about some disheveled parliamentarians? Come on! Of course they're disheveled. War's breaking out. It's a crazy time. They're probably up all night.
On our sanctions list.
Preparing statements.
If not now, he needs to act.
I thank her very much for what she's doing with the OSCE and the MMR operation. I've met...
Lacey do be dunking on their drip.
Unit, and I think they do an amazing job. Sadly, because of the threat and the duty of care that we have to them now, we've asked them to step back temporarily. Let's hope we're in a better position by July. Let's hope. But at the moment, things are not looking good.
Uh-oh.
Stephen Crabb.
Mr. Speaker, can I strongly welcome my right honourable friend's very resolute and clear-sighted statement this afternoon? Does he agree with me that one of the things that Putin is looking for at the moment is any hint or sign of division or variance amongst members of the Western Alliance, and therefore it's really important right now to invest that time to go the extra mile to ensure that our allies right across Europe and including America speak with one voice at this time, in the same way that we this afternoon have spoken with one voice from this House?
I thank him very much, and there's been a lot of commentary today about, should we have gone further, gone with the whole package of sanctions unilaterally today. One of the reasons why we wanted to work in lockstep with our friends is just to reinforce that message of unity and resolve in the West.
Stephen Farry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do think it is the majority view in the House that the government should be going further today on the level of sanctions. But can I press him on the issue of refugees? In the event of further Russian aggression in Ukraine, we would likely see a surge.
Yeah.
So can the Prime Minister give me an assurance that this will not be purely left to the neighbouring countries in Eastern Europe? This will be a genuine effort right across Europe, including the UK, to provide assistance, including here, and that there is proper contingency planning happening in Whitehall and also consultation with our allies.
I thank you. The best way to avoid a refugee crisis is for President Putin to de-escalate. The best way to get him to de-escalate is for the West to be united. That's why we're implementing the package of sanctions that I've described together with our friends.
John Whittingdale.
My right honourable friend aware that just 8 years ago this month, 100 Ukrainian citizens died under the sniper fire in the Maidan protest against the pro-Russian corrupt administration of Viktor Yanukovych. Does he agree that the courage and willingness of Ukrainians to give their lives in the fight for freedom and democracy for their country demonstrates that any further invasion is bound to lead to horrendous bloodshed on both sides?
He is completely right, and since those demonstrations, 14,000 Ukrainians have died fighting, Mr. Speaker, for their freedom. And I believe, and he knows that country well, my friend knows that country well.
So this is going to carry on basically forever until sanctions are announced. Everything's going to be heating up. I'm going to tear off. Work's going to be starting soon. I want to get a little bit of breakfast, all that jazz. We're going to go raid Pixel Smixel. She's like an Australian, and like the way our hours work out, it's like nighttime over there, and she's doing like global news hour right now. So anybody hanging out on Twitch, we're going to go raid Pixel Smixel. If you've never seen her stuff, she's really great. I really like her. She also does some like really lovely singing every now and again. So if that's like kind of your jam, then hopefully you enjoy her. I always be weird. I'm setting up a nice talk this Sunday about the trucker convoy with some cool people. It's going to be called Hot Topics, Cool Heads. And I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye, everyone. See ya. See you later, YouTubers. Y'all have a nice day now, okay?
Well, the right